Hello everybody. My name is Thomas Kreil. I'm the Vice President Global Pathogen Safety at Takeda, and I'm also the Chairperson of the Global Pathogen Safety Working Group at PPTA. I would like to today share a few thoughts with you around the pathogen safety margins of plasma protein therapies. Now, to set the stage, I think it is really important to contextualize these therapies in that they're collected from the same vein as transfusible blood products that are very different products indeed, in that these products are directly transfused back, if you will, into a recipient vein. So these products are erythrocytes, thrombocytes, or also fresh frozen plasma. You can also, however, from that same vein, collect plasma for fractionation into these plasma products that we're going to discuss. Now, the plasma collection is the start of a manufacturing process that results in a plasma-derived medicinal product. And it's that difference that also makes for a very different pathogen safety margin of these two different therapies. In that while they're collected from the same vein, they're conceptually very different. And that to safeguard blood products against virus transmissions, you can select for a healthy donor, and also you can test the donations for the absence of viruses or testing for virus surrogate markers. That same thing can be done for the fractionated plasma for fractionation. The selection and the testing does occur, but on top of that, there is this manufacturing process that has the capability of virus reduction, i.e. the inactivation or removal of viruses. And it is that third leg of what we call the safety tripod that really makes a big difference there. So how that? Here, as you can see, the selection and testing has limitations. And that first, it is limited by what you test for. And then secondly, by the limit of detection that any assay has. That is really quite different for plasma for fractionation in that the selection and testing is done the same way, but then comes the manufacturing process with the virus inactivation and removal. That manufacturing process is really robust, it's very generic, and it is effective against known viruses and even unknown viruses. I'm going to show you examples of that later. Now, quantitatively, as you can see, that middle part, that virus reduction part, I believe it is fair to say is by far the dominant part of it quantitatively. And I shall give you the examples to illustrate that. Here is an example of how the selection of low-risk donors here for plasma donation has resulted in a much lower risk of these donations to be contaminated by hepatitis C and B virus as well as HIV virus versus the comparison to the general US population. And as you can see quantitatively, roughly between here, the general population, and a qualified plasma donor, that's a 100-fold reduction of risk. For the testing that has been implemented ever since the early 1980s, you can see that with the progression of different assays, the residual risk of transfusion transmission of HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C virus has been reduced. But as you can see here for hepatitis B virus, it is actually a removal of just in the order of 100-fold. Now for the other viruses, it's more, but let's keep in mind for dimension, a 100-fold reduction of risk. Now this is what we quantitatively know about the virus inactivation and removal, in that every manufacturing process that is licensed by a regulatory body needs to contain 2 steps that are effective against viruses, and every one of these steps needs to be capable of reducing any virus load by 4 logs. Now 4 logs, that's a reduction by 10,000-fold of risk. So 10,000-fold, and that's twice, then that's 10,000-fold times 10,000-fold risk reduction, or cumulatively at least a 100 million-fold reduction in risk. That's how potent this manufacturing process can be, and that's why this clearly is the major contributions to viral safety margins for plasma derivatives. So to give you an example, this is what is used, for example, for an immunoglobulin products. Actually, there we have 3 dedicated virus reduction steps. One being treatment with solvent detergent that from these viruses here washes away the lipid envelope. The second one is depicted here as nanofiltration. And as you can see, the immunoglobulin molecules easily pass through these pores, where the much larger viruses are actually retained. And then finally, there is a step that we call low pH, elevated temperature incubation, and that inactivates viruses quite effectively. So cumulatively, therefore, this is the situation that we face. Yes, blood products and plasma derivatives, the raw materials, are collected from the same vein, yet the safety margins of these products are intrinsically different. In that for blood products, you only have the selection of low-risk donors and then the testing of donations, but there is no manufacturing process. And it's this manufacturing process that is so robust for plasma derivatives, and it does work, as I have said, also against unknown viruses. Now you might ask legitimately, why do we know? Well, this is the volatile microbiological environment that we operate in. There is new viruses that emerge or are transpositioned around the globe all the time. And that is why we have gained a lot of experience with these viruses as well. But not to get too pleased with our knowledge. This is actually taken from a review in 2017, and already there, monkeypox was mentioned twice. That is not taken away from the fact, though, that in 2022-23, there was a multi-national outbreak in non-endemic countries, more than 100 of them around the world, with close to 100,000 cases and more than 100 people dead. So these viruses, while we know about them, are of concern. And what about the safety of plasma derivatives with respect to these emerging viruses? Well, as we know that the manufacturing process is so critical, every time we have a newly emerging virus, then that's where we need to verify that our assumptions about the safety margins are still true, i.e. that the virus reduction still works for these emerging agents of concern. That is what we have done over the years. Studies on West Nile virus, the bird flu H5 virus that right now makes a reappearance in the United States, chikungunya virus, hepatitis E virus, Zika virus, and most recently orthopox viruses as a model for the monkeypox virus. It's important to stress that for blood products, there have been new tests required, for example, for West Nile virus in the United States or for hepatitis E virus in Europe. And yet, there have been virus transmissions by these products. Very few, but yes, there were some. For plasma products, it's different in that no additional testing was required, and still there were no transmissions based on the confirmed virus inactivation and removal capacity of the manufacturing process. I'm going to give you one example that has very clearly shown what the numbers even look like. And that is when West Nile virus emerged in the United States in the late 1999, causing a few cases at first in New York and then becoming endemic in the entire US. A very large study done by the CDC and the FDA together has generated the numbers to say the selection of healthy donors reduced the risk only by approximately 20%, in that 80% of these donors that carry the virus in their blood look totally asymptomatic, so no way to eliminate them from the donation process. The testing has also eliminated donations, but only a half to 2/3, so the very low limit contamination viruses were not detected. That is very different to the reduction process that has been shown to inactivate very potently by many orders of magnitude in every one of these manufacturing steps, this virus. And as a result, what has happened in the United States, testing for blood components was required, and indeed more than 1,000 in already these first 3 years were identified and not transfused. During the same interval, still, there were 6 cases of transfusion transmission. And then for a larger time span investigated, there were actually more cases. That is very different to, again, plasma derivatives, in that through the virus inactivation here, there were no transmissions, despite the fact that no testing was ever implemented. So cumulatively, this has resulted in the situation as depicted here. Blood and plasma products are collected from the same vein, but we need to acknowledge that their safety margins are wildly different. For blood products, they are limited to the selection of low-risk donors and the testing of the donations. For plasma derivatives, on top of the selection and the testing, there is the virus inactivation and removal, collectively called virus reduction. For emerging agents, it is important to verify that our assumptions about the safety margins are still upheld. But that's what we do. And that's why these two different product classes also should be regulated very differently. In that, yes, for blood products, there may be a requirement for additional tests, but that is not true for plasma products. With that, I would like to thank you for your attention. Hopefully that short sharing of thoughts was of interest to you. Thank you.